Welcome back, everybody. So I'm going to give you a quick little overview of all the things that I've done to this beautiful 65 Mustang of mine, and that's going to be today's video. Just going over everything I've done on the 65, every bolt I've touched, all the different things I've done, and all the things that I still need to do to get it to be where I'd consider perfect, which is a long ways from now. But let's show you all the car. So she's a little bit dirty, but it's a white 65 Ford Mustang coupe. So the paint was the paint that I got it when I bought the car. I haven't touched anything in terms of body work. I have done a little bit of metal work to the internal stuff and the external, like suspension, but nothing to the outside of the paint. As you can see, I've got we'll call it a custom dash and a custom steering wheel in here. This is actually from a 81 F100 that I was working on. That was my first project vehicle. So this needs to be modified for the actual space that it's supposed to sit in, but for demo purposes and like just testing it around, driving it, not being perfect, this worked wonderfully. You can see in here I've got a lot of wiring and stuff that I need to go back through and clean up, but most of this is to turn on all of the gauges and speakers and audio and all the wonderful things that you need to run this car. But the head unit for this car only supports aux and FM radio. So what I'm doing is I have my little aux cable somewhere around here, feeding that to the radio, and then because there's no real adjustments on it, I have this equalizer from Planet Audio that I'm using to feed all of the speakers and the subs in the back. I have two little speakers sitting down in here. I don't know if you can see them, but they're both in the corners, one right here and one up underneath over there. And then in the back I have three, I think they're 6x9s. You can see the little ends right here. It's a 1, 2, and 3. All of that's being fed. All the speakers are being fed off of this tar amps, 4x, I think it's 400. And then these two, this 10-inch sub and 12-inch low profile sub, are being fed by that 2x 1400 amp watt, or 1400 watt amp. So again, wiring definitely needs to be redone in all of this stuff, but you know, function over form for me. As you can also tell, the wheel wells are missing on this vehicle because in order to fit these 275 35/19 tires, I needed to open up a little bit of space, because as you can tell, it was coming very close to the floor over here. It was actually hitting the inner wheel well, especially up in that front corner over there. So I need to build wheel wells at some point for this, but we'll get there eventually. I want to make sure that she drives right, nothing's rubbing, and then I'll build the inner wheel wells for her. So up in the front, I said in an earlier video that this is a Ford 302. I actually took this engine apart and rebuilt it a couple times because I messed up the first time. It came out of my buddy's 73 Ford Mustang, and it's actually from I think a 60s Ford Fairmount. But as it stands right now, it is a 347 with a scat stroker kit. It is a hydraulic roller conversion. So underneath this intake I have link bar hydraulic lifters. I have a small base cam inside of it. I forget what it is, but it's somewhere in the 240, 250 duration range at 50 thousandths tappet lift. So it's got a nice little idle, not completely overbearing, still totally streetable, totally drivable, at least from my experience driving around the property. You're able to tell that this is not a normal carburetor. This is actually a Holley Sniper, the first version of it, and it is a EFI carburetor conversion. The distributor is also a Holley distributor, and obviously Holley ignition coil. So all of these parts actually work together and allow me to control the timing, my fuel pressure, idle speeds, idle ignition spark, a whole bunch of different variables that just let you really fine-tune how the car runs and drives. I haven't gotten too much into the like the actual tuning of it, but I definitely have a nice little bass tune in here that the handheld module lets you do, and it runs perfectly. Maybe at the end of this video I will take it off my lift and I'll go and drive her around the property for y'all a little bit. But again, wiring everywhere. Wiring definitely needs to be updated or replaced or just cleaned up a whole bunch. But you can tell that the shock towers on the Mustang, originally they came all the way out to here and they went all the way down in both of those spaces. I had to cut those out with my plasma torch to make room for my subframe, or my, what would you call that? My front suspension for this car. So it kind of updated it and brought it to a much more modern technology. It's still coil springs, but it is a shock built into the upper shock tower, these little guys. And eventually, if I save up the money for it, I can switch it over to a coilover instead of the old school shock or coils. Let me get this thing up on the lift, and then we'll take a look at all the stuff that I've done underneath this. So hang on 1 second, guys, while I get that up in the air. Time for us to raise this badger on the air. Alright, before it goes too high, I'm just going to give her a little rock and shake and make sure everything's still holding up good and she's on the pads real nice. I hate to have to drop this car off my lift after I put hundreds of hours into all the work that I've done. Alright, so when you're dealing with lifts, guys, just a little safety tip. Always make sure that you set it back down on the safeties before you get underneath it, just in case something fails, so it won't drop and kill you. That is very important when it comes to having your own lift at your house. So let's crawl up underneath here, show y'all what I've done. So this used to be a manual steering rack car. I've converted this over to a power steering rack for, well, just easier to drive it. You can see my little coil springs right here with the shock in the center of it. You can also see all of the welding and the painting that I've done to make sure that this thing doesn't rust out. I also did a disc brake conversion on this car because, let's face it, disc brakes are more modern and generally speaking safer than old drum brakes. You can see I've got a oil filter relocation kit so I can get my oil filter up out of here in an easier to get to spot. I've also got all of my grounding wires and stuff going through the car because I have a rear mounted battery. I have these long tube headers that I had on my truck, and they just did not fit when I put them in here, so I had to do a lot of custom modifications and cutting to them. I'm not sure if you can quite see up in there, but some of these are very heavily cut up and modified in order for it to fit. It was a very fun and a fulfilling project to get them to fit in here and actually have somewhat of a decent clearance up underneath the car right here. I decided when I was building the exhaust on this car that I wanted to put V-bands on it because it just makes taking the exhaust off so much easier and more reliable and less exhaust leaks when I'm building it. So when I built it, I made sure I had a nice little X-pipe in here because I think X-pipes sound better and have a little bit higher performance on them. Although I've got more V-band clamps here, and here's my little muffler, my little performance mufflers over here. They don't really muffle much, but it takes the brunt out of the exhaust. So I don't know if you can see right here, but the transmission mount right here is actually a modification from my truck. So this little mount used to be just the standard stock brace for underneath it. So I cut that and then I welded it onto this pipe and modified the pipe to be just the perfect length to fit in between the subframe on this car, so then it could hold the transmission and everything in the perfect spot or wherever it landed really, but still be secure. Like this thing's not going nowhere. It's sturdy. I trust it. You can also see that I actually added subframe connectors to stiffen up the car a little bit so it doesn't, you know, twist the body or destroy anything like that. Welding's not perfect on it, but I made sure to run a bolt through this 1/4-inch plate over here all the way through to the back side so that it's not going nowhere. And then in the back of this car I have a Ford 9-inch with a, I think it's a locking rear hub in it, or locking differential. I don't have a good way of saying that right now, but it will help you from twisting the one side faster than the other, and it'll give you a better, straighter line when you're driving and you're spinning tires. But you can see up here that I had to make drop shackles for the leaf springs right here. I had to inboard these leaf springs, I think it was like 3 inches to be able to get them to fit in this car with this size tire. You can actually tell from the original leaf spring perch and then leaf spring perches that I bought and welded onto here. So far everything's held up really nicely. I made sure to move my shock mounts inside the car as well, so that way it, you know, holds and actually has a nice little cushion to it when I'm driving it. You can also see all of my plumbing for my fuel lines, my return line, fuel filter, fuel pump, pre-filter, and then the original gas tank with a shorter, what would you call it, fuel sender in it, with the original wiring, so I can still see how much fuel I have. Oh, and obviously GM 10-inch disc brakes in the back, because why not? It doesn't hurt. But that's the brunt of all the work that I've done. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it definitely is. I forgot to mention, I have a TKX 5-speed manual transmission behind this with the, I believe the option I chose was the wide gear ratio, so that I can get a little bit more high speed out of it, or a little bit more overdrive out of it, so I'm not turning so much RPMs at high speed. But let me get out from underneath here. I'll drop her back on the ground and then maybe take her for a little spin in the yard. Hang on. Now, I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but underneath my tires I actually have this these little wooden planks, 2 different spots. So what this enables me to do is actually drive my 2012 Mustang up here and not have to jack my car up a little bit before I get the car lift under, because my 2012 is so low that just normal stuff just doesn't fit up underneath there, and it just makes my life easier. But yeah, let's get her back down. Not a good angle in here, but we'll just Alright guys, so that was a quick little drop around the, well, we call it the farm. But I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll show y'all some more stuff with the cars later on. Until then, y'all take care.